And today we are actually putting together an ozone system that our good friend and compatriot Jono has purchased here in Mexico. And I've already had a look at it. It's an excellent system, very good quality components. I'm really happy with the way it's put together, and I'm very, very difficult to please in regards to ozone because I've been doing ozone since 2004, and I have sold probably 150 units of various types over the years. There is some controversy about breathing ozone and what it does. Medically, they say it's very bad for you to breathe ozone and it will damage your lungs. This is actually not true. How do I know that? I have breathed very high concentrated ozone for long periods of time. We're talking 1 to 2 hours. Many times in my life, my lungs are stronger than they've ever been in my 70 years. I never got any damage to my respiratory system. Now, this is my theory, and if anyone wants to investigate this, I think they will find that my theory is actually quite true. Ozone at higher concentration will irritate the respiratory system, but that irritation is due to two things. Number one, it's going to kill microorganisms that are in the linings of my airways. And when you breathe in air, you don't just breathe in air. You breathe in dust, you breathe in bacteria, you breathe in spores from all kinds of critters. You breathe in a real mess. In fact, most people don't know this, but in 1 cubic centimeter of air, that's the size of a poker dice. Most people know what a poker dice is as far as the size of it. In that large a volume of air, there are between 2,000 and 4,000 particles of pollution. You can't see it, you can't smell it, but it's there in the air and we're breathing it in. Now, it's going to get deposited in your sinuses, in your airways, all the way down into your respiratory system, down deep into the lungs at the very bottom of your thoracic cavity. Now, when you breathe ozone, what is the ozone going to do? It's going to kill microorganisms that are on those linings, and it's going to oxidize the toxins and poisons that are sitting on those linings as well. And so that causes an irritation. It's actually a good thing. But some people will cough and they freak out and they think it's damaging them, but it's actually not. It's just actually fixing them, but they have to cough because of the irritation in that process. So I like to cover this particular point because it's such a controversial, what is the word? Out of the box way of looking at something that supposedly is medically a challenge, and that is breathing ozone. And of course, they talk about ozone when they give levels of pollution. What they don't tell you about those ozone levels, if you're in Los Angeles or Chicago or New York, and they'll say, well, the ozone levels are this, and oh, the pollution's really bad. But what's happening there is the ozone molecules are attaching themselves to a pollution molecule and neutralizing it so that it is no longer damaging to the environment or to people that might be breathing it in. And so you get these levels, ozone levels are really high today and things like that. That really isn't a correct evaluation of what the ozone levels really mean. So ozone is an enigma. And that is a word. What that means is it's hard to understand. It is counterintuitive in many ways. And that is really important to understand how counterintuitive ozone really is. So let's keep moving here with getting our ozone going. So we have now been able to make ozone, step number one. Now that we know how to make it, we have to get it into the body. Now, it can go into the body in many different ways through virtually almost every orifice, every opening that the body has. It can also go on the outside of the body and is very beneficial there. Ozone does many, many things, and I don't go into that in depth here because it would take me at least 2 hours to go over all the wonderful things that ozone does in the human body or in an animal. And there's been a lot of work with ozone on animals. And I do want to mention that there are some incredible instructors teaching ozone work in North America. The three that come to mind immediately are Dr. Robert Rowan out of Los Angeles, who's a medical doctor and teaches incredible work. Dr. Frank Schallenberger out of Reno, Nevada, who is also a medical doctor and has been teaching ozone at seminars twice a year for actually decades, attended by many, many medical doctors who are using ozone now in their practices. And once upon a time, decades ago, medical doctors could spend time in jail for using ozone in their clinics because it was controversial. And guess who? I won't say who, but certain government bodies and certain mindsets in the government did not want ozone utilized by the public for obvious reasons. They can't make any money on it. It's just that simple. So once we learn how to make ozone, we want to be able to get it into the body. So what I normally do when I do whatever we're doing now, which I call my tutorial on ozone, is I ask the client, do you want to start at the top of your body or at the bottom? And if we start at the bottom, we'll do that, and then we'll work up. If we start at the top, we'll start there and work down. So, Jono, you pick.
We'll go from the bottom up.
You want to go from the bottom. Okay. So, I'm going to list the ways we can do ozone at the bottom of the body, okay, to get it into the body. Now, there are a couple of things, and I've actually used it on my bug bites, which you can see on my leg here, that are healing up beautifully, because it neutralizes the toxin in a mosquito bite, ant bite, spider bite very, very quickly. And I'm going to show you something that I don't think you've got in your kit, but I have one, and you might be able to scrounge one of these up. This is actually the end of an old stethoscope that I got in 1971 when I had to buy all my diagnostic instruments for chiropractic college. And this was the end of the stethoscope. Now, the cool thing about this is it has what's called lure lock end on it. So it fits onto a lure lock tip, which is something like that I can attach then to one of these hoses. And I can use this to put ozone on something like a mosquito bite, a spider bite, a burn, anything that, and I can actually unscrew this black part, and then I have an even smaller compartment here. And so I can get extremely concentrated ozone onto a very tiny part of the body through this. And so there is actually something here that we're going to use, and I'll talk about it now because the topic came up, and because we are going to actually re-engineer this stethoscope that you purchased to be a ear applicator for ozone to go in the ears, and we are going to have left over this guy here, which will work very nicely if we unscrew the actual membrane. This can be used to apply ozone to smaller areas of the body. So you actually got a neat bonus when you bought the stethoscope, because with the stethoscope, we're going to make it into an ear applicator. So we're going to take off the hose here, and this now becomes redundant. However, if you're close enough to this with the tank, you could actually use this hose, which is vinyl, and just cut this end off. Okay, and you'll see when I make the stethoscope piece, and you could use this to bring the oxygen from here to here, because you actually don't need a silicone tube to take the oxygen from the tank to the generator. You can use vinyl, you can use anything you want, because it's once the ozone is produced that you want silicone. So let's talk about that for a minute, because it's good to talk about these things as they come up. Silicone is resistant to ozone. And your silicone tubing, if you take care of it, will last you probably between 10 and 15 years of using this system. But there's something you have to do every time you use the system. You have to flush the ozone out of the silicone tubing when you're done. And we'll talk about how to do that. It's really quite simple. If you leave the ozone in the tubing, it will wear at the silicone. So The silicone tubing is essential in the use of ozone because it's very, very resistant to the ozone. There is one other kind of tubing that is more resistant to ozone than silicone, but we can't use it because it's very, very inflexible, and that is Teflon tubing. And there is a company making Teflon-lined silicone tubing, but it's ridiculously expensive and not necessary. Silicone is all that you actually need. So we're starting at the bottom of the body. So one of the things that we can do, and we have here an ozone bag for ozone insufflation. We also have here somewhere some plastic bags for...
The body bag one, right?
There's a body bag one, I don't see it.
I didn't bring it though. That was
Okay, so I'm going to come over here to my ozone equipment and I'm going to grab this bag. Now, limb bagging, we're starting at the bottom of the body, so we're going to start with the feet. Okay, let's say I have stepped on a nail, or I've scraped my heel and I've been bleeding and the bleeding has stopped, or I have a rash on my foot. I might have toenail fungus. There's virtually anything that can go wrong with a foot, and you can use limb bagging. So can I have a rubber band? There should be a rubber band over there. So what we're going to do, just as an example, we're going to put my foot in the plastic bag. And we've got a rubber band. We're going to use in a minute. And we need another hose, which I believe is in here. And yep, this is the second hose. And we're going to take this off of this apparatus. And I will put this all back together, guys. When you start using ozone, you learn how to get very, very resourceful with your equipment. This is an ozone destructor. We'll be using that in a little while. And this is the hose that I want here. There we go. Okay. You can go back over there. So I am actually going to replace this one because it's really long. And I'm going to use this one to get the oxygen from the tank to the generator. No, wrong one. There we go. After you've used this equipment for a while, you'll get really, really good at using it. You'll know it cold. Doesn't take long. It's not brain surgery. So we have a nice short one to get the oxygen to the generator, and now we have a nice long one that we can hook up and use to get the ozone where we need it. So I'm going to hook this one up to the ozone outlet, and I'm going to put the end of this one in the bag, like this. And then I'm going to take my rubber band and I'm going to put it over my foot and up the bag and secure the bag very gently. Come on. There we go. So I'm going to secure the bag very gently like that. It's not too tight. And now I can turn the oxygen on at the tank regulator and turn the generator on and make ozone. And on the skin, I'm going to use super strong ozone. Inside the body, we might have to go with more gentle ozone, but I'm going to turn this all the way to setting 3, which I know is a lot more powerful. I'm sorry, not on this one. On this one, setting 1 is the most powerful. The amounts are a little bit higher. So at a quarter, I'm getting 47 gamma. Okay, and ozone is measured in something called gamma. So if you look at my leg, I'm now filling up that bag with ozone gas. Now it's going to do a number of things. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to kill any infections I have in my bug bites, which I've got about 8 or 9 on that leg, okay? If I have toenail fungus, which I don't, it would kill that, okay? Some of the ozone is going to be absorbed through the skin into my bloodstream and go to my whole body. Now, not a lot, but some. So there are 2 aspects to putting ozone in and on the body. Number 1 is the local effect, and number 2 is the systemic effect. And we'll talk about that with every different application, okay? So let me tell you a true story about something that happened with leg bagging. My youngest son, both of my sons, have ozone systems. They live in Ontario, Canada, and they both have their own ozone system because I gave them one each. What a guy. One day, my youngest son phones me up and he says, I did something really cool with the ozone system. And I said, really cool, just tell me. And he said, well, a friend of mine had really, really bad poison ivy. And he had it on literally on both legs from the knees down. And it wasn't getting any better. It was spreading around, and poison ivy can do that because the actual blisters will fill up with the toxin and then they'll break and spread it somewhere else. So the poor kid was having a rough time with the poison ivy. And he'd had it for a couple of weeks. So my son said, what I did was I put one of his legs into a garbage bag and put the hose in and tied up the garbage bag and left him for an hour. And he said, after an hour, the poison ivy was gone. And I said, really? He said, yeah. So we did the other leg. He said, it completely cleared up the poison ivy in 1 hour on each leg. So here's how serendipity works. The very next day, the kid who lived next door, I was living in Vernon at the time, in a beautiful, beautiful apartment. And my landlord and landlady lived in the bigger part of the house, and they had 2 sons. And the older son, okay, because in British Columbia, in Ontario, poison ivy grows about this high. In British Columbia, poison ivy grows about this high. When I got here and first saw what I call monster ivy, I was like, how is it possible that that can grow so high? Anyway, so the very next day, his name is Trevor. Trevor comes over and he says, you know, I've got this really bad poison ivy. And he had it all the way up to his mid-thigh on both legs. And he had just got it. So I said, strangely enough, ozone apparently knocks the heck out of it. And he said, what do we do? And I said, well, we're going to bag your legs. So I got a big garbage bag. It was actually one of the orange leaf bags that were semi-transparent. I put both his legs in it, and I tied it up and sealed it so that both legs were in the bag. And we put the hose in there, left him for an hour, and the poison ivy was about 90% better in 1 hour. He came back the next day, and we did it again, and it was completely gone. Completely gone. So that's what you can do with limb bagging. You can limb bag feet, arms, legs, whatever you want. However, there is a catch here. You cannot limb bag your head. That's an ozone joke amongst ozone practitioners. You better not limb bag the head. So limb bagging is really important. It's amazing for burns, infections, incredible for burns. I mean, almost mind-blowing how fast the healing is when you limb bag a burn. And it's really easy to do. You've already seen it. It's not brain surgery. It's something anybody can do. And if you had one of these at home, which hopefully you do or will, you are going to be able to correct all kinds of challenges very, very simply and inexpensively. So now I'm turning the generator off, but I'm not going to turn the oxygen off yet because I have to do what I talked about earlier. I have to bleed the lines or purge the lines of the ozone, especially this hose here. This won't have ozone in it, only oxygen. But the ozone is in this tube here. So I'm going to leave the oxygen on for another 30, 40 seconds to, because now the oxygen is still flowing, but the machine is off, so I'm getting oxygen into the bag, not ozone. Now I've got the ozone cleared out of the tube. I'm going to turn the regulator back to 0. And I'm going to do something you always must do in this process, or you will lose a whole tank of oxygen someday. And everybody has done it, including me, numerous times over the years. I'm going to turn the tank off by turning the tap to the right like you would a water tap. So that now I cannot, if this is left on, if the regulator is left on, there's only a little bit of oxygen in here. I'm not going to lose the whole tank overnight, which I've done a number of times. I wake up in the morning and my tank's empty and I got to go get it filled up again. It's not horrifically expensive, but I lost $45. Here it's way cheaper. So now I'm going to take the bag off my leg, and strangely enough, it smells like ozone.
All right.
Yeah. Pretty interesting process. So limb bagging is really important. The next higher place we're going to put ozone is up your butt. And that's the way I put it. It's going into what's called a rectal insufflation. And insufflation simply means putting a gas into a cavity of the body. And rectal insufflation is the second most potent way of doing ozone into the human body. The first is actually injecting it intravenously, which I will not go over here. That is something I will teach privately and is being taught to medical doctors and naturopaths. And I know naturopaths who actually do that process. I did that on myself in 2005 when I had throat cancer, and that's one of the reasons I'm still alive, is that I killed throat cancer that was in here with ozone over a period of about 3 to 4 months. And it has to be done repetitively, consecutively, day after day after day, because you have to keep hitting the cancer cells with the ozone. And I might as well talk about that right now because it's very important. Ozone is the perfect chemotherapy. What do I mean by that? It's a chemical, but it's not a pharmaceutical chemical. It is a natural chemical that we breathe in every day. It's oxygen, okay? But ozone kills cancer cells in a very, very interesting way. It actually damages the cells to the point where they can no longer survive. Okay, it actually damages the cell membranes. And the cells then go through the process of what's called apoptosis and they die. Now, here's the really cool thing about what I just said. Cancer cells cannot protect themselves from ozone. They don't make the necessary enzymes that all the healthy cells of your body have. And there are 3 primary ones. They're called superoxide dismutase, otherwise known as SOD. Okay, glutathione peroxidase. Okay, and the third one is catalase. And these 3 enzymes are produced by healthy cells in our bodies. Now, here's what happens, and here's why some people, and we just actually had somebody go through this. One of our clients came in and said, you know, I just don't feel, she's doing rectal ozone 2 or 3 times a week right now. She said, I just don't feel like I'm getting the same dose anymore. And here's why. When you do ozone, and it doesn't take very much, okay, and it goes to every cell in your body, your cells get a message that there's going to be more ozone coming soon, which is actually true if you're doing ozone therapeutically, but they don't know that, okay? But the cells say, oh my goodness, we've been exposed to ozone. We better make more of those enzymes, because if it comes again tomorrow, we want to be even stronger than we were today. Essentially, that's what's going on. So your healthy cells make more of their protective enzymes against ozone, but guess what? The cancer cells can't do that. So they stay weakened, and then you hit them every single day with ozone, and eventually they die. Guess who else does not have the capability to make those enzymes that would protect them against ozone? Parasites, yeasts, funguses, viruses, and bacteria. They can't do it. So they are destroyed by ozone. That's one of the beauties of ozone. It kills the bad stuff, lets the good stuff stay alive, and makes the good stuff stronger. Does it get any better? I don't think so. It's like the perfect therapy. It just doesn't get any better. It really doesn't. And is it expensive? Well, let me ask you, John, what was this system? What did it cost you?
Around 1,000, 1,500 with all the
Dollars.
Yeah. US dollars.
Right. So about $1,500. And then the tank is a loaner, but you're going to buy it. And I think these are about 6,000 pesos, something like that, as I recollect. Yeah, because I bought one. This one here is mine. And I think it was 6,000 pesos. So 6,000 pesos, what's
$300.
about $300. So you're under $2,000 for this system, which is about right. It's about where most ozone systems come in if they're complete and have everything that you need. And this one is actually quite complete. So we have here a bag, and I'm going to unpack this. Is that okay?
Yep.
If I unravel this stuff? Okay. So for ozone insufflation rectally, we are going to put ozone, not to be casual about it, it's going to go up the butt. Now, what you'll notice about this bag is it has a number of different compartments. It has a 200 milliliter compartment, a 400 milliliter compartment, and a 750 milliliter compartment, depending on how full you make the bag. I personally don't use one of these, but I think they're a great idea. I've used syringes, and there are times when I hook myself directly up to the machine and do it that way. But if you want it measured in a dosage, which a lot of people do, you want to have something like a bag or a syringe that you can fill up and then use that to get your ozone into the body. Now, did it come with some things to insert into the rectum?
Yes,
Yeah,
right there.
here, right here. Thank you. So this says Lure catheter rectal probes. So what they've actually given you is pretty cool. They've given you a bunch of them. Now, the cool thing about ozone is that it cleans and kills all the germs and bugs. So I'm just going to pull one of these out and leave the rest of them in the bag and show you what they look like. So this is in a sterile container, and they usually have an end that you can peel apart. Yeah, this one has an end you can peel apart. So the ones that I use are much shorter. These are actually male urinary catheters. So I'm going to open this one up and sacrifice this one for the demonstration. Is that okay? Okay, so what we have here, we can actually put it back in there and you can wash it with peroxide. It'll still be usable. So what we have here is a catheter that can go, this one is actually a male urinary catheter. That's why it's this long. The female ones are only about this long. So this is the one I normally use. This is a female urinary catheter. It doesn't have to be very long. So this thing is only about 5 inches long. Okay, because you're going into the rectum and you're only going up this far. This is actually overkill. There's nothing wrong with them, but this goes in quite a ways, and it's got a lure end on it. So we will have somewhere, and it's right here. We will have a lure end that attaches to. Okay, so that is your rectal setup. This is also the same exact setup for vaginal. Okay? Now, that's the great thing about being a woman. You have a whole extra place where you can get ozone that we ain't got. I'm jealous. So the neat thing about this is it's got a valve on it and a lock, so you can undo, you can stop the flow, start the flow. Okay, because sometimes you're going to need to do that to get as much ozone into you as you want. And with ozone, there are some rules. You always start slow. And here are the reasons why you always start slow. You don't know how your body's going to react. You don't know how toxic you are. You don't know how many infections you've got. And you can have all kinds of stuff you don't know about. We see it in the blood all the time. People feel perfectly fine, but they're infected as can be. And they've got 80 different microorganisms living in their blood. Okay, not uncommon at all. So you're going to want to start slow at 200 milliliters. Okay, we actually, in the clinic here, we start people at 50 and we might go up to 100. In fact, I have some glass syringes coming, which are 100 milliliters. Whereas this bag, this section of the bag is going to fill up to 200 milliliters. And then you've got this one at 400 and this one at 750. So the whole bag is 750 milliliters. I used to do 10 times that much at a single session regularly. When I had throat cancer, I easily do 10 times that much.
Rectally?
Rectally, absolutely.
Okay. Squeeze the bag.
I initially, when I first learned to do ozone in 2005, the only thing I had been taught by my teacher, who I bought the generator from, was how to do it intravenously. So that's all I knew initially. I started very slow at 15 milliliters the first day, then I went to 20, then I went to 25, I eventually got to 50, and I was doing 50 cc's in my veins once a day. Now, I had a big lump on the side of my neck here. You can still see the scar because it was removed surgically in April of 2005. And it was about that size, sitting right here. Quite large and quite worrisome. I mean, when you got a big lump on the side of your neck, you're like this. What is it, right? I knew it was cancer. I just didn't know what kind. I didn't know it was one that could easily have killed me. I thought it was lymphoma, which I had treated many times very successfully in practice, but it was not. It didn't turn out to be lymphoma. It turned out to be metastatic squamous cell carcinoma, which has got a very, very high death rate within 2 years. Not something you want. And the good thing for me was I didn't know what kind of cancer I had. And that's a whole different saga. That's another whole show that we'll do on that one for sure. What I use right now for the ozone that we're doing with people is a 50 cc syringe. Now this is a glass syringe. Why glass? If at all possible, I like to use glass because chemicals, plastics, you don't know what the ozone is going to oxidize into the gas in there. So I much prefer to use glass, and this is a very precise syringe. And I clean it regularly. The beauty of ozone is that it kills everything. So literally when I use it, I fill it up, empty it, fill it up, empty it, fill it up, and it's ready to go. Filling it up twice kills anything that might have gotten into the syringe, which it can happen anyway, but that's okay. So you can't do that with this, but you're not going to get anything in here. And ozone will kill anything that might have ever been in here. And very, very quickly, one of the things you will want to do before you use this for rectal insufflation, you will want to fill it up with ozone completely twice. The purpose of that is to oxidize any chemicals that might be on the inside of this bag and expel them into the air as opposed to expelling them into your body. Once you've filled it up twice and emptied it, it should be totally clean and ready to go. So the next step, once you have filled the bag, and the way we would fill the bag would be by taking this end here and attaching it to the end of the hose, or it could go directly on here. I think it's going to be easier to put it directly on here, and we're going to go ahead and fill it just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so now I'm going to turn on the tank again because I've turned the tank off. So turning to the left, okay, and I'm going to turn this knob to 1/4 liter per minute. I'm going to turn on the generator, and the gas is now going to flow into the bag. But it's not. And why not? That's the question.
Is the oxygen on? Oh, it is on.
Yeah, the oxygen's on.
It's on.
We're going to turn the flow up a little bit. Yeah, it's going in. This part's inflating here. Now this one's inflating, and then once these two are full, this one will start to inflate. And there it goes. So I'm going to turn the flow down a bit so I get a little stronger ozone in there. So I'm at 1/4 liter per minute now. And these two sections are full. And now it's going to start filling up the 750 ml section. So if you wanted to do just your 400, you would fill it to there, and then you would stop the inflation of the bag and then insert the catheter and squeeze the bag. So the bag system is actually pretty nice, and these will last a very long time. They're really tough vinyl. You're never going to squeeze it hard enough to break it or anything. So it's actually a really good system. I prefer the glass, but that's just a personal preference thing, and that's what I've been using since 2005. So we're almost there. We've got a lot of ozone in here.
So how does it work going straight to the machine? You just put it up and it just goes straight up.
Yeah, I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty simple. You're going to need you might actually you'll need another one of these ends, but there's probably some spares in there. If not, we'll scavenge one. There's a couple there. We'll scavenge one from somewhere else. So the bag is almost full now, and I can feel the pressures mounting. We don't want to over pressurize the bag. That's probably enough there. So I'm going to turn this off first, and then I'm going to go straight to 0 on the regulator, because now I want to take the bag, and now I'm going to close the valve or lock off the flow, because I don't want to lose any of the ozone. So now I'm going to detach from the generator. Okay, and now I'm going to take my catheter and attach it to the end of the bag, and now this is my rectal system ready to go. So the next step is pretty simple. Put a little lube on here. I prefer coconut oil because it's non-toxic. It kills things. You can use aloe vera gel. Those are my two favorite lubes for these. They both work really, really well. This is then inserted about that far only into the rectum. And once it's in, what am I going to do? I'm going to unlock this, okay, let this stopper go, and now I can squeeze the bag and the ozone comes out into my body, and it only takes that long. Okay, that's it. That's all it took. Now my bag is empty. I can lock down here at the stop again, and I'm ready to go again. And I can smell the ozone, and I love the smell of ozone. Some people don't. Some people really dislike it, but I personally love it, partly because it saved my life.
I love it. It's amazing.
Pardon? Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's the best ever.
Yeah, some people really dislike it. Other people love it. So that's how you do rectal. And it's pretty simple. We'll talk next about vaginal because it's the next compartment that is down there on about 50% of the population. So vaginal is ridiculously simple. It's the exact same process. However, you have to realize that the vagina is a compartment, not a tube. The intestinal tract is actually a tube. It goes from here all the way out the other end, and it's around 26 feet long. Most people don't know that. It's 26 feet long. And the large bowel is around 5 to 6 feet long, depending on how big the person is. So there's a lot of room in the large bowel. So for rectal insufflation, you can put a huge amount of ozone in there. And sometimes that's necessary, as it was when I had throat cancer. My body ate up insane amounts of ozone and loved it. I can do now about 1/10 the amount I did then, and my body will say, that's enough. And it won't let me put any more in. It will clamp down my bowel. But when I had the throat cancer, I could just keep going. It was crazy how much ozone I put into my body. But here I am, alive and well, thriving at 70. And I think I'm a pretty good testimonial for ozone. So for vaginal, there's a difference. The difference is that we are going to, can I have that system again? Yeah, thanks. The difference for vaginal is it's not a tube where we can just put in a massive amount. For the vagina, we are actually doing what's called an ozone irrigation. So the ozone is going to go into the top of the vagina. So this is going to go, of course, we're not going to use this one because it's been in somebody's rectum. And we'll talk about how to make sure we don't mix them up because that's not a good thing. This will go to the top of the vagina, and then it will infiltrate the ozone throughout the whole vagina. But your system has something really interesting. Your system actually has a vaginal applicator, which is this guy here. Yeah, I know. It looks like something else, but we won't talk about that. The vaginal applicator that came with your system is really interesting, and it has an in and an out port here. All right, because what this is going to do, this is very different from the way that I've always recommended women do vaginal and the way it's always been done. This is a bit of an innovation because the ozone is going to go in through the top of the vagina, through that hole. And at the bottom here, there is a vent. And the ozone is then going to travel down the thread and irrigate the walls of the vagina and then be channeled back out through the vent at the bottom of this unit. It's a very unique way of doing it and very, very efficient and probably extremely effective. Probably as effective or more effective than using one of these, where you don't worry about it coming out. It simply goes in, it fills up the cavity, and then it comes out. So both will achieve the same results, but slightly different ways of applying it. Now, we need to talk about how strong the ozone needs to be for each of these. I use 1/4 liter per minute on the regulator for virtually all of these applications. There are times when I will use 1/8 of a liter per minute, which gives you much stronger ozone. And sometimes I'll use 1/16 of a liter per minute, which will give you even stronger ozone. If we look on the chart here, what we'll see is that 1/8, from 1/4 to 1/8, we go from 47 to 80 gamma. And then at 1/16, we go to 91 gamma, and 1/32, we go to 103 gamma. So we get very, very strong ozone at 103 gamma. And that's where we would use that ozone on the outside of the body, but not on the inner cavities of the body are much more sensitive to ozone. So you have to be careful not to use too strong an ozone, especially at the beginning when you're just starting out. And that's one of the keys, is start slow, build up over time, and then once you get to a level that you're comfortable with on a daily basis, or maybe once or twice a week, you can then stay at that level. And let's talk about that once or twice a week. There are 3 clinics that are actually small hospitals in Cuba, and all they do is ozone. They're called ozone hospitals, and it's well known that Cuba has these ozone clinics, and lots of people fly from all over the world to go to Cuba, and they get a little hacienda or a little condo somewhere near the ozone hospital, maybe on the beach, and then they go every day for their ozone treatment. Now, it's interesting because I've had a couple of friends and clients go there over the years, and what I was told by all of them was that the medical doctors that work there, and these are medical doctors in Cuba, not naturopaths or non-doctors, which is nothing wrong with, but these are medical doctors using ozone. They all do a rectal insufflation twice a week. They're not sick. They don't want to get sick. So they do a rectal insufflation twice a week. So that's a pretty interesting point, that we have that going on in Cuba. Now, one of the reasons Cuba uses a lot of ozone is because they don't have the greatest economy. Their country was run by a dictator for many years, and things were pretty rough there for a long time. Yeah, we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. So, because they don't have a lot of money, they can't buy pharmaceuticals, because the cost of pharmaceuticals, because of the pharmaceutical industry, is a little bit high. And countries like Cuba, Mexico, don't have the funds to buy extremely expensive, pharmaceuticals at $1,000 a pill. That kind of insanity for cancer and, the viral stuff that's going on, like that what's it called? Something remdesivir. I don't even know the name of it. Remdesivir? Yeah. That's an antiviral that actually doesn't work. It actually is a suicide drug, and almost everybody that takes it gets kidney failure and eventually leaves the planet really, really early. And of course, we're allowed to talk about some of the controversial stuff here, so certain people have certain financial interests in remdesivir. And I won't mention the names, but maybe I will, because I think Tony ought to hear this. So when you have a financial interest in something like that and you promote it, I think that's called conflict of interest. Is that not? Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah, and that goes on a lot. So anyway, once again, ozone, the perfect antiviral. It works against Hep C, Hep B, Hep A, all of the herpes viruses. It works against them all. And it is one of the things that is being utilized right now in many clinics to work against the effects of the jab thing that all these people are getting. Judy Mikovits says ozone is one of the keys to surviving that. So, we will be setting up a massive center here in Ixtapa that will have a lot of ozone utilization. And we have access to some of the best equipment on the planet. I will talk about that now, because the best ozone generators on the planet are made by a very, very good friend of mine who owns a very large company in Canada that makes the ozone generators that purify the water for cities like St. Petersburg, Russia, like Los Angeles, and other large cities that are using ozone to clean their water instead of chlorine. And he makes the generators. that clean the water for these cities. These are massive ozone generators, and they are known to be the best on the planet. And he makes them in 2 factories in British Columbia, Canada. And he's actually I call him an ozone genius. He's a very good friend of mine. And he is the manufacturer of my ozone generator, which is over there, which doesn't look like this one, but does pretty much the same thing, only a little more sophisticated because it's a clinical model. This is a really good home unit, by the way. You really scored with this. I'm very impressed with it. But I've sold hundreds of these guys over the years, and there are a lot of people still alive who would probably not be if they had not purchased a generator from me and the accessories and had what you're getting right now is my 2-hour tutorial. So we were talking about vaginal insufflation. Start slow, go slow, do it a little bit, see how you react, okay, and then work up from there. It's that simple. You always start slow and work up. Now, there are some challenges, and we have to talk about this both with rectal and with vaginal. Ozone kills microorganisms. It doesn't care if you're good or bad. It kills all of them, including your microbiome. You got to know that. So if you're doing vaginal ozone, periodically, you have to reculture that part of the body with the good bacteria that were there in the first place. And that is a whole 2-hour lecture on the female genital urinary microbiome ecological system, which is very different than the male. We don't have that. So it's one of the reasons you guys live longer. No, it's serious. It's true, actually true. Women live longer partly because they have that going on. So I want to talk a little bit about this, okay? Because these are used for rectal insufflation and for vaginal insufflation, both. Now, you don't want to use the same one for both. Obviously, you don't want to spread bacteria from one place to the other. So what most couples do when I've done this is have 3 Ziploc bags. And the Ziploc bags are labeled. For Maureen and I, one would be labeled RR, which is Ross rectal. One would be labeled MR, Maureen rectal, and another one would be labeled MV, Maureen vaginal. So we would have 3 Ziplocs in the drawer in the ozone room for these, and they would be then reused, rinsed with hot water or with peroxide if somebody wants to do it that way. And I have some very wealthy clients who buy these by the case and use a new one every time. And that's a personal preference. If you want to do that, by all means, knock yourself out. But it's not necessary. And they're like, I don't know, they're like $1.10 each. So, you know, if you want to use a fresh one each time, order them by the case and away you go. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Did you know that Arnold Schwarzenegger wears a brand new pair of men's underwear every single day? Just thought you'd like to know. Yeah, I get it. It's like, what? Hold it here. Okay, so Arnold, knock yourself out. I still love you. Conan was your best work. Although Predator was pretty good, I have to say. So we've covered pretty much vaginal, we've covered rectal. The next place we're going as we move up the body, okay, actually we need to talk about the bladder before we finish this section. Because the bladder is really, really important, and bladder cancer is a big deal these days and is extremely deadly. And remarkably common because anyone who has had Hep C and been treated with interferon, and you can look this up for yourself on the internet, will quite likely develop bladder cancer. So you get rid of the Hep C, but you die from bladder cancer. Not a great trade-off, personally, but that's the way things work, unfortunately. But bladder cancer can be cured with ozone almost every single time. And it's done by using a urinary catheter Okay, especially if it's a woman. If it's a man, you're going to need a much longer catheter to get to the bladder. And this sounds a little crazy for you guys who are watching this video, but what would you rather do? Stick something up there or die? Let me think. Maybe the first one? Yeah, I think so. So, and if you need to have somebody else do it for you, hire a nurse, get your wife to do it. I don't know what to say, but it's doable. You can survive that. And I've got friends who have survived bladder cancer using ozone. Ozone seems to be extremely effective in bladder cancer, rectal cancer, anal cancer. I've seen rectal cancer gone in 6 weeks. And people save themselves from surgery or have less dramatic surgery because they've been doing ozone. I've seen all of these things happen. So once again, if we can get everybody with an ozone generator in their house, we might not need so many doctors. Oh, did I actually say that? That would be controversial. I'd better be careful. We might not need so many doctors if everybody has an ozone system in their home and is able to handle a dramatic number of their health problems with ozone. And remember, pandemic proof, we talked about we were going to give you back the power to treat yourselves and take care of your own families and your friends and your neighbors and your loved ones. Well, this is one of the ways we're going to be able to do that with ozone in every single house. So, let's move on. We've talked about bladder, and it can be done in men and women. It's a little different, but both are doable. Let's move up the body now to another orifice, which most people don't even know they've got. This is a really strange one. It's called your belly button. All right, what does the belly button got to do with anything with ozone? Well, what is the belly button? The belly button is where you were attached to your mother, through the placenta, through the umbilical cord. It was your source of life essence. And we all have one, unless you've had it removed because you had a tummy tuck, and I think that's a horrible thing that they do to women, to remove the belly button. That should be not allowed. But some women lose their umbilicus because they have a tummy tuck and they've had 10 children and the tummy's too stretched. And I get why women do that, but losing the umbilicus is not a good idea. But there's something really interesting we could do with this guy. Okay? This is the perfect size for a belly button. There's a really interesting phenomenon that occurs by doing ozone over the belly button. And that is that when you do it over the belly button, within 5 minutes of holding it here at a very low potency ozone, you can taste it in your mouth and you will smell it. And the reason is right inside the belly button are some very powerful veins that once connected you to your mother. So let's call them the mother veins. You can get it to your whole body by just holding this thing with a very powerful ozone coming from the generator over your belly button. So that actually is an orifice. It's a place where we can get ozone into the body. Even though it doesn't seem like an orifice, it actually is, and it's a really unique one. There are a couple of other crazy orifices that have been used over the years that very few people know about. An orifice is an opening into the body. Now, there are a couple of orifices that humans have that most of them don't know about, and those are the nipples. The nipple is an opening into the body, but normally something comes out of the nipples, not going into the nipples. But I have seen ozone clear up what's called mastitis, which is a fancy word for breast inflammation that occurs in a lot of women with breastfeeding. Does it not? And you can get an infection. There's all kinds of nasty things that can happen with breastfeeding. And of course, the breasts are engorged and they're full of milk and they get swollen and all kinds of things can happen. But this little guy, okay, or this one, this is probably even better. This little guy, I think it's a little deeper, will fit right over a nipple and allow you to get ozone into the breast tissue. Now, the interesting thing about ozone is that it is extremely penetrative. There's a big word. What does that mean? It penetrates into the body extremely easily and effectively. And it will penetrate this far into the body if you hold it on the outside of the body. So if I want to hold this here, it will penetrate this far into my body within a very short period of time. And some of it will be absorbed into my bloodstream and go to my whole body, especially if I'm doing it over the navel, where it's going into veins and going directly into the blood. This is actually a really effective way of getting ozone into the body. If I bag my leg, some of it's going to go into my bloodstream and go to the whole body. So why not? And the nipples for women, it's extremely effective at cleansing that area of the body, and women who've been through menopause aren't using the breasts anymore, but still a really good thing to do now and then, especially if a woman had mastitis when she was breastfeeding. And a lot of women will go through that, and they'll go on antibiotics or they'll treat it naturally and eventually it'll go away, but there still might be toxins and poisons residing in the breast tissue that can be oxidized and cleared out with ozone. So that's a crazy orifice that nobody thought of, but now you know the rest of the story, and you're getting a very thorough tutorial here, by the way. So let's move up the body from the breasts, and the next place we come to is the mouth. Okay, so can we breathe ozone? Actually, we can. And you have here something really interesting. You have this very large beaker, and I believe you have a system here somewhere to ozonate water. So we have this set up here, which is extremely well structured. And let me show you how it's used. It goes in like this, and it's a cork, a beautiful not latex. It'll be a special material that's resistant to ozone. And then we have the bubbler stone, which goes to the bottom, almost to the bottom of the beaker. Okay, and the purpose of this, okay, we will fill this up with a certain amount of water or oil. Now you're going to need another one of these. So order from the company another setup just like this, because you're going to need two. One for water and one for oil. And you don't want to use the same one. Okay? So this setup can be used for breathing ozone, but we will be bubbling the ozone through oil. And there are two things that happen when we do that. Some of the ozone will go into the oil or the water, and some of it will come out the top, which is this hose here, and can then go to be breathed if we're bubbling it through olive oil, or if we're bubbling it through water, it can go into our ears, so that we are doing what's called an ear insufflation. So that's what this particular setup is for. This one's very sophisticated. It's a very strong beaker. They've given really good quality stuff. I'm really quite impressed with the system you've got. I engineered baby bottles to do this exact thing, and they work extremely well. I re-engineered them for that. Baby bottles are great, and they're glass. If you can find the glass ones, they work incredibly well. So I've been using those for years and sold hundreds and hundreds of them over the years. But if we want to breathe ozone, we can breathe it through the nose or the mouth. Either way, doesn't really matter. But using ozone in the mouth is also very effective for certain things. I'm actually going to ask you to move those so I can set this here. Did you want to redirect this guy a little bit? Awesome. Okay, so we have this set up. Since we're doing an actual tutorial, I think what we'll do is we'll fill this up and we'll do the water one. So, Jillian, I'm going to ask you, would you fill it up to about 800 with water? And use the purified water, please. We don't use tap water. We could, because the ozone will neutralize anything bad in the tap water very, very quickly. But I generally use purified water. Sometimes I'll use distilled water. As long as it's water, we're good to go. But we want to use water that we would normally drink, even if it wasn't ozonated. Okay, and the reason is we are probably going to drink it because we're going to be creating ozonated water. So when ozone bubbles through water, some of the ozone goes into the water and will stay in the water for around 30 to 40 minutes. Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you. So now we're putting the bubbler stone down into the water, and we're putting the cork on the top. Not too hard, but just hard enough to seal. And we have to note that we have two things coming out of the top. We want to make sure the one going to the bottom is the one that we hook up to the actual ozone generator. Now, what these people have done is they have put a one-way valve in line with the hose, which I have used over the years as well. And the purpose of this is so that the water cannot go back into the generator if there's a backflow, and there can be in certain situations. So that's a really good thing that they've added. It's a nice add-on. So we're going to hook that up now to the generator, and the first thing I'm going to do is the tank is still on, so I'm going to turn the water flow. And what you'll notice is that we have bubbles. So we're now at 1/8 of a liter per minute, and there we're at 1/4, there we're at 1/2, and we've got a really strong flow of oxygen going through the water. Now this is the outlet valve, okay? And this rig is used for doing ears, and some people use it for doing vaginal as well. But primarily this is for doing the ears, and the reason we use this is twofold. Number one, if we hooked up the ear applicator, and where is it gone?
Right here.
No, the one that came with the unit.
Right here.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to use this one. I'll show you how to re-rig the other one.
Okay.
They both work well. This is a neat little system that they've done. So it is actually a sort of stethoscope, but it's done with silicone tubing, which is what I do as well. And then they have an end piece on the system. This end piece goes on here, but I don't think that's necessary. Okay, so now this is our outlet hose coming out of the bottle, and this system is designed to attach directly on like that. So now I've got it on very firmly, and now I have two ear applicators that are the same length, and these are designed with silicone, and they will go in your ears, okay? Like that. Now, there are two things that the water does. Number one, acts as a muffler. If we hook this hose directly up to the generator, which we could do, the sound of the generator would be amplified dramatically, and if we put those in our ears, it'll make us deaf. Okay, it's that loud. Trust me, I've done it. Okay, so this will muffle the sound, number one. And number two, the second thing that this does is it adds some humidity to the ozone gas. Now, ozone gas, unfortunately, has a characteristic of drying the tissues. We don't want to dry out ear canals, and we don't want to dry out the vagina. So we might use this system doing vaginal as well. It's not uncommon for women to do that. However, there's something we didn't talk about. Okay, so this is actually a really good system for doing the ears, okay? Because it's silicone all the way to the ears, and these tips are silicone as well, and they'll fit in the ears. Ear insufflation will do a number of really interesting things. It'll get rid of ear infections. One of the things that everybody pretty much comments on when they start doing this the first time is that their ear canals feel hot. And the reason that ear canals feel hot is that as the ozone is killing bacteria and the ear canals are full of bacteria, there's probably billions of them in there lining, and there's wax in there and all kinds of other stuff. And as the ozone is oxidizing things and killing the bacteria that are living in there, every bacteria as it dies releases heat. So the ear canals, the first time you do this, will feel quite warm. The second time you do it, they'll feel a little warm, and then they won't feel much warmer after that if you do it on a consistent basis. Now, Dr. William Turska, who was a naturopath in upstate Washington in the United States, was pretty much the inventor of doing ozone in the ears. Now, what he found with his elderly patients was that all the ones that did ear insufflation, none of them got dementia or lost their memory or went senile, as it was once upon called. Not one of them went senile. And Dr. Turska did it every morning before he started practice for 20 minutes in each ear. Now, he didn't have one of these, okay? And I'm going to show you what to do with this in a minute, because these are pretty cool. I buy these in bulk. I bought them in bulk. But we'll show you that in a minute. Dr. Turska lived to 96, and when he decided to leave the planet, he did it in an interesting way. He saw clients in his office until noon one day, and then he went home for lunch, and after lunch he laid down to have a nap, and he didn't wake up from the nap. He just left the planet. Good way to go. I'm hoping. Someday. So he is the actual inventor of doing ear insufflation. He also invented doing ozone through olive oil for breathing it. Now, I don't know how that happened, but a very good friend of mine in British Columbia, who is a retired naturopath, knew him personally and actually worked with him for a couple of weeks many, many years ago to learn what he was doing and how he was doing it. And he used ozone extensively. And I want to say this right now to all you naturopaths who are watching this. If you are practicing without using ozone, as far as I'm concerned, you're not a naturopath. As far as I'm concerned, you're what is known as a quack, who should be using ozone and doesn't because you're afraid of it. It's too drastic. The government doesn't like it. Give me a freaking break. Come on. If you're a naturopath and you're not using ozone, get your act together and get it figured out. Go study with Frank Schallenberger. Go study with Robert Rowan. Go study with Harold Robbins in New York City, who isn't even a naturopath. He's a podiatrist who works on feet and is curing thousands of people in Manhattan using ozone. And he's a podiatrist. And you naturopaths, come on, give me a break. You medical doctors, I'm talking to you guys too. You want to help your patients? You actually think you want to help your patients? Then get ozone in your office. Go see Frank. Get signed up. He does a course twice a year. After you see this video, he's going to have to probably do it 4 times a year. And you're going to want top-notch equipment, which he has available at the seminar, of course. And you're going to want to take it back and start using it in your office every single day and getting miracles. Okay, that's one of the reasons they call me the miracle hunter. Yeah, I know that sounds bizarre, but that's exactly what I am. I'm the miracle hunter. I want miracles. In my office, when I was in fully active practice, if we didn't get 1 miracle a day, it was not right. We wanted at least one miracle, and we frequently got 3 or 4 every day. And that's the way it should be. So enough of that rant. So the bubbling it through water is used for ears and for vaginas, and you can use it for other methods as well. Bubbling it through olive oil is for breathing ozone. Why would we want to breathe ozone? Well, we can't breathe ozone full strength because of what I discussed earlier on in the presentation. It will be too much of an irritant to the respiratory system and we'll cough so much we can hardly function. Okay, so we have to alter the ozone into another form of breathable gas that will still have the same effect. And we're going to do that by bubbling it through olive oil. Or we can bubble it through coconut oil, or almond oil, or walnut oil, or grapeseed oil, almost any oil that is organic, cold pressed will work. What happens when you bubble it through oil? It changes the ozone into a different gas that is a combination molecule of the ozone and the olive oil or the oil molecule. And it becomes what's called a terpene gas. Now you can look this up, please do so. Don't believe me, look it up on the internet. There's lots of information about this and the terpene gas that is formed that is now breathable. Now, do we have a breathing apparatus with your system? You need to get ozone in your office and start getting your patients better in ways you never imagined possible. And because you're dentists and deal with teeth, you can do things that other doctors can't. You can inject teeth, you can do all kinds of things with teeth, and there are complete dental systems available from a number of distributors that are very, very reasonable in cost. Compared to what my dentist did with me in 2005 when I was suffering from throat cancer and had 4 impacted wisdom teeth, a cyst in my jaw, and some other teeth that were causing major problems for me. And he used an ozone machine on my teeth that he got from Europe. And it cost him, I remember he told me what it cost him, it was $80,000 that he paid for this ozone system from Europe. The systems that are available now are available at a price that is incredibly low compared to that. In fact, he joked around with me, Dr. Ross Gorell in Sawasan, who's an amazing, probably one of the best, I call them organic dentists, probably one of the best organic dentists in the world. People fly from all over to see him. And he said, I could have bought a Jaguar, but I decided to buy this ozone system from Germany that would get my patients better quicker and more effectively. So that's the kind of guy he is. And Ross, if you're watching this, you're pretty cool. So ozone is amazing in dentistry and is used extensively, and we now have dentists in Mexico who are looking at getting ozone in their practices here, and we will be working with them to get them up to speed on how to use ozone effectively in a dental practice. Even though I'm not a dentist, I have injected quite a number of teeth and jaws and gums with ozone to help people with various challenges. And it's very, very effective. It's one of the most effective things that a dentist can possibly use. And hopefully there are dentists watching this who will decide maybe they should look at using ozone in their practice and get it in there so they can get better results. And generally, when you get better results, you see more clients. So guys, girls, don't worry about clearing out your practice because everybody's getting better. You're going to get a lot more clients if you're using ozone. It's just that simple. So we've covered ozone with olive oil and breathing it. We've covered dental, which is another orifice. We've covered breathing it through the nose. There are a couple of orifices that we don't use ozone very much on, and that is the eyes. However, there are applications for ozone with the eyes, but we're not going to put a cup over the eye and expose the cornea to ozone. It's really, really hard on the cornea because of the vascularity and the blood vessels in there. But you can use ozonated saline drops. What are they? Well, the tears are saline. They have the same salinity or salt content as the blood. And if you've ever tasted tears because you were crying and you got them on your tongue, they tasted salty because they are slightly salty. So if we're going to use eye drops to clear eye infections, we're going to want to use eye drops that have the same amount of salt as tears, and that is 0.9%, which is a very low level of salt. But we can actually put a little bit of salt in the water that we're using to run the ozone gas through, and we can make eye drops or ozonated water that has the same salt content as tears, and now we can use ozone in the eyes to clear out eye infections and eye irritations, and it's extremely effective for all kinds of ocular conditions. So I think we've covered pretty much all of the orifices of the body. We've covered eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and all the ones down below. We've covered the outside of the body where we can do limb bagging. Actually, Jonna, would you hand me the body bag? Okay, this is an interesting system. I will talk about this because I used to sell ozone saunas, which are still marketed and can be very effective, but this is an actual body bag, and it's not for a dead body, it's for a live body. This is actually, I'm not going to unpack it because it's going to be really hard to pack it up again, but this is a bag that is big enough to put your whole body in. Now, when you put your whole body into a bag and fill it up with ozone, you're going to absorb a huge amount of ozone because the skin absorbs ozone really effectively into the bloodstream. But this is a very good way to absorb a massive amount of ozone in a very short period of time. Is it better than any of the other methods? Probably not. But it's another method that can be used. I used to sell the ozone saunas, but I don't because people tended not to use them enough, and they were problematic in that it took a long time to do the ozone treatment, and you had to set it up and get inside and zip it up and seal it at the neck. So they were problematic, but they are still marketed for anyone who's interested. They are a decent way of doing it, but the body bag is actually another good way to do it. So it's just another method. We've covered all of the different methods that are available. I think you've basically, by watching this presentation, gotten about as much ozone information as you'll get anywhere on the planet. And no, I'm not bragging. I've done a huge amount of these presentations. I've gotten hundreds and hundreds of people on ozone. They've all benefited. Many, many people are alive because of it that would have left the planet years ago. Men with prostate cancer who've done rectal insufflations, women with cervical cancer who've done vaginal inflammations, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, thank you, lung cancer with breathing it through olive oil. All of these things respond incredibly well because, as I said earlier on, ozone is the perfect chemotherapy. It kills the bad stuff and helps the good stuff. What could be better?
Beautiful. How about a little thanks for watching? I'm Dr. Ross Andersen. See you next time, something like that.
Okay.
Still rolling.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Ross Andersen with Pandemic Proof, and don't forget to watch Pandemic Proof Live. We're going to be having amazing guests because I have a list of guests that would absolutely shock you. You will get information you cannot get anywhere else. Yes, some of it will be controversial, but it's all going to be real and valuable beyond your wildest expectations. Thank you for watching.
Wait right there. Quick photo.
Oh, it's a great idea, actually.